Stalingrad, the battle that broke Hitler's war machine. Picture this. It's late 1942, the world's at war, and a city called Stalingrad, way out in Russia, becomes the stage for a showdown that changes everything. This wasn't just a fight for a city, it was a make-or-break moment for the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, with ripples that shaped the outcome of World War II. For Americans, this battle is a reminder of how grit, strategy, and sheer will can turn the tables, much like the U.S. contributions to the war effort through Lend-Lease and later D-Day. This story is about Erich von Manstein, a German general who was a genius at war, but met his match in the frozen ruins of Stalingrad. It's about the Soviet soldiers who stood their ground against impossible odds. And it's about how this battle shifted the momentum, paving the way for the Allies, including the U.S., to take down Hitler's regime. I've woven in some economic context, my own take on what it all means, and a narrative that'll keep you hooked. So, let's dive into the chaos of Stalingrad and see how it changed the world. By November 1942, World War II was raging. Nazi Germany had steamrolled across Europe, and now Hitler had his eyes on Stalingrad, a city on the Volga River in southern Russia. Why? It wasn't just about the name, though it being named after Soviet leader Joseph Stalin made it a juicy target. Stalingrad was a major industrial hub and a gateway to the oil fields of the Caucasus. Controlling it could choke off Soviet resources and fuel Germany's war machine. But the Soviets had other plans. In a brilliant move called Operation Uranus, generals like Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasilevsky encircled the German Sixth Army, led by Friedrich Paulus. Nearly 300,000 German and Allied troops, soldiers, tanks, artillery, were trapped in a pocket around Stalingrad. For Hitler, this was a disaster, but Berlin wasn't panicking yet. The Germans had pulled off miracles before, breaking out of encirclements in places like Demyansk and Kulm. They had fortifications, air supply lines, and a secret weapon, Erich von Manstein, the mastermind behind Germany's lightning victories. Manstein was a rock star in military circles. He'd planned the blitzkrieg that crushed France in 1940 and had just conquered Crimea, taking the fortress of Sevastopol against all odds. In November 1942, he got a big promotion to lead Army Group Don and later Army Group South. Stalingrad was his chance to cement his legend or lose everything. Spoiler alert, this operation, dubbed Winter Storm, became both his greatest test and a turning point that spelled doom for Nazi Germany. The stakes: why Stalingrad was a big deal economically. To get why Stalingrad was such a big deal, let's talk dollars and cents, or in this case, oil and steel. Germany was stretched thin by 1942. They were fighting across Europe, North Africa, and now deep in Russia. Their tanks, planes, and trucks needed fuel, and they were running low. Historical records show Germany produced about 6 million tons of oil a year, mostly from Romania and synthetic plants. That wasn't enough to keep their war machine humming. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, had the Baku oil fields, pumping out around 23 million tons annually. If Germany could seize Stalingrad and the Caucasus, they'd cut off Stalin's fuel supply and grab it for themselves. For the Soviets, losing Stalingrad would have been a knockout punch. The city was a key transport hub for oil and grain. The USSR was already on its knees. Germany had overrun its western industrial heartland, and factories had been relocated to the Ural Mountains and Siberia in a massive effort. In 1942, the Soviets built about 8,000 tanks, down from 1941 due to the chaos of evacuation. But here's where the U.S. comes in. Lend-Lease aid, signed into law by President Roosevelt in 1941, was starting to flow. By 1943, America sent thousands of trucks, planes, and tons of food, helping the Red Army stay in the fight. Stalingrad wasn't just a Soviet battle, it was a piece of the Allied puzzle, and U.S. support played a role in keeping the Soviets standing. Operation Winter Storm, Manstein's big gamble. With Paulus' Sixth Army trapped, Manstein hatched a plan called Operation Winter Storm to break them out. The idea was simple but bold: punch through Soviet lines, link up with Paulus, and get the Sixth Army out. Problem was, Germany was running on fumes. Most of their forces were tied up elsewhere, like at Rzeszów, where the Soviets were launching their own offensive Operation Mars. Manstein scraped together what he could: the 6th Panzer Division from France, battered units from the Caucasus, and some shaky Romanian and Italian troops. The plan called for 2 attacks: a smaller one from the north to distract the Soviets, and the main push from Kotelnikovo, about 75 miles from Stalingrad. The 6th Panzer Division, led by General Hermann Raus, was the tip of the spear, fresh, well-equipped, and one of the best units in the German army. The Luftwaffe would keep Paulus troops supplied by air until Manstein could reach them. But the Soviets weren't sitting still. Their scouts, including cavalry units led by General Timofey Shapkin, spotted the Germans massing at Kotelnikovo. Fun fact: Shapkin fought for the anti-Bolshevik whites in Russia's Civil War until 1920, then switched sides and became a Soviet hero, dodging Stalin's purges. His cavalry, backed by the 85th Tank Brigade, clashed with the 6th Panzer Division before the main offensive even started. It was a brutal fight. Germany lost 20 tanks for good, and the Soviets took heavy casualties but bought time to reinforce the front. The clash at Verkhnekhamsky, where it all went down. On December 12, 1942, winter storm kicked off. The northern attack fizzled fast. Soviet defenses were too strong. Everything hinged on the Kotelnikovo push. The 6th Panzer Division smashed through the Soviet 302nd Division and raced toward Stalingrad, crossing the Oksay River and reaching Verkhnekhamsky, a small village about 60 miles from Paulus' army. This is where things got wild. The Soviet 2nd Mechanized Corps under Vasily Volsky pulled off a gutsy move. They swung around the German spearhead, crossed the Oksay, and set up a bridgehead right in the enemy's rear. From there, they hit Verkhnekhamsky from multiple angles. The Germans were caught flat-footed, scrambling to respond. Raus tried to crush the Soviet position, but as his tanks moved out, Volsky's forces struck again, briefly taking parts of the village. The Germans fought back, retaking Verkhnekhamsky, but then their command got messy. Orders came to abandon the village. Then, oops, cancel that, take it back. This chaos sparked ferocious fighting. Soviet anti-tank rifle teams, hidden in the snow, became a nightmare for German tankers, popping off shots that pierced lighter armor and caught crews off guard. After 2 days of slugging it out, the Germans held the village, but they burned through precious time. The final push and the Soviet hammer. By December 20th, the Germans reached the Mishkova River, just 25 miles from Paulus' trapped army. But they were running on empty. 60% of their motorized infantry was gone, and they'd lost 200 of their 650 tanks. Facing them was the Soviet Second Guards Army, freshly arrived under General Rodion Malinovsky, fighting like their lives depended on it, because they did. Manstein, sensing the clock ticking, urged Paulus to break out toward him. But the 6th Army, battered and pinned down by Soviet attacks, stayed put. Marching through the snowy steppe under Soviet air raids was a suicide mission. Then the Soviets dropped the hammer. On December 16th, they launched Operation Little Saturn, a massive offensive aimed at Rostov. German and Italian lines collapsed like a house of cards. By December 23rd, Manstein had to pull his forces back to defend Morozovsk, abandoning the Stalingrad rescue. The next day, Soviet troops retook Verkhnekhamsky. Airfields supplying Paulus were captured one by one, and German transport planes were destroyed on the ground. Winter storm was over, and the 6th Army was doomed, surrendering in early 1943. Why it fell apart? Lessons from the snow. So why did Manstein's plan crash and burn? First, the Germans underestimated the Soviets. They thought the Red Army was on its last legs, but Stalingrad brought out a fierce resolve. Second, Germany's resources were stretched thin. Tanks broke down, fuel ran low, and the Luftwaffe couldn't keep up air supplies. Third, Soviet tactics like Volsky's daring flank attack threw the Germans off balance. For Manstein, Winter Storm was a paradox. It boosted his rep as a brilliant commander, but it couldn't save the Sixth Army or stop Germany's slide. The failure at Stalingrad marked the beginning of the end for Hitler's dreams of conquering the East. What it means today, my take. Stalingrad isn't just a history lesson. It's a story about human spirit. Soviet soldiers like Shapkin and Volsky showed that even when the odds are stacked against you, guts and smarts can win the day. For Americans, it's a reminder of how teamwork across nations, like U.S. Lend-Lease aid, helped turn the tide. Manstein's story, meanwhile, shows that even the sharpest mind can't overcome a crumbling system. Germany's overreach and resource shortages doomed them, no matter how clever their plans. Economically, Stalingrad was a tipping point. Germany's hopes of grabbing Soviet oil died, and their industrial edge faded. By 1943, the USSR outproduced Germany in tanks, 19,000 to 17,000, thanks to relocated factories and Allied aid. The U.S. contribution, from jeeps to Spam, kept the Soviets rolling, setting the stage for victories that led to Normandy and Berlin. Folks, Stalingrad is a saga of grit, sacrifice, and history-changing moments. If this story got your pulse racing, hit that subscribe button for more epic dives into the past. Drop a comment below. Tell me what blew your mind, what you want to know more about, or how you see Stalingrad's lessons in today's world. Your voice keeps this history alive, so let's keep the conversation going.